Her cruel words made the human set down his armor and walk away. The first shot came before anyone had even announced a war. Nathan Cole was 3 steps from the airlock when the hull shook. Not the slow, rolling vibration of a meteor impact. This was sharp and deliberate, like something knocking. He grabbed the rail, killed his mag boots, and pulled himself toward the command bay in 3 smooth pulls. The ship's alert system had not yet triggered. That meant whatever hit them had been precision targeted, small enough to dodge the passive sensors, but large enough to knock out the outer plating on Deck 2. "Give me eyes on Sector 7, he said. Lieutenant Priya Akafor was already ahead of him. She had the feed up on the main display before he finished the sentence. Outside, against the backdrop of the Cathara Nebula, all rust and violet and slow-burning light, there was a ship. It was not a human ship. The silhouette was too angular, too deliberate in its ugliness, like something built not to be admired but to be feared. "Identification?" Nathan asked. "Volkai cruiser," Priya said. "Heavy class, they are hailing us." Nathan straightened. He was not a tall man, not particularly broad, and he wore no rank insignia outside of formal settings. But he had been doing this for 11 years, and the way he stood in a room told people enough. Put it through. The figure that appeared on the screen was a Volkai matriarch. Her species was bipedal in the loosest sense, with 4 upper limbs and a face that operated through a cluster of sensory organs rather than anything humans would call eyes or a nose. The translator bead on her collar pulsed orange, meaning she had chosen not to use diplomatic encoding. She was speaking raw, and the translator was working hard. "You are in Volkai territorial space," she said. "The survey maps you carry are obsolete. This region was claimed at the Cathara Accord 42 of your cycles ago. You will surrender your vessel and its crew for processing." Nathan looked at Priya. Then he looked at Ensign Dex Farrell, who was pulling up the treaty database with both hands moving fast. Dex shook his head slightly. The Cathara Accord had no clause covering this sector. They were in contested gray space, technically unclaimed by any signatory power. "I am Captain Nathan Cole of the exploration vessel Ardent," Nathan said. "We are operating under the Unified Exploration Charter, Article 9, which covers good faith survey operations in unclaimed or disputed sectors. We are not military. We carry no weapons beyond defensive countermeasures. We have no intention of." "I did not ask for your credentials," the matriarch said. "I asked for your surrender." Nathan held her gaze, or what passed for her gaze, for a long moment. "I will need to consult with my crew and review the applicable articles before." "You have no crew worth consulting," she said. "Humans do not negotiate, they scavenge. You are bottom feeders in a galaxy that has moved past you. Set down your vessel and stop embarrassing your species." The channel cut. The command bay was very quiet. Priya looked at Nathan. Dex stopped typing. Even the ship's hum seemed to hold still. Nathan pulled up the tactical display. The Volkai cruiser had moved to a blocking position between the Ardent and the nearest relay beacon, cutting off communication, cutting off escape. A perfect cage, built in the time it took to exchange 30 seconds of words. He looked at the weapons locker on the far wall. Standard issue defensive package, 2 hull emitters, a scatter pulse array, and the kind of countermeasure suite that worked fine against pirates and debris, but would last about 4 seconds against a Volkai heavy cruiser. He looked at it for a long time. Then he walked to his chair, sat down, and started typing. "Sir," Dex said, "what are we doing?" "What we always do," Nathan said, "thinking." He was not angry. That was the thing about Nathan Cole that people who did not know him often misread. The stillness after insults was not weakness. It was not shame. It was the particular quiet of a man who had been told the same lie enough times that he had stopped arguing with it and started proving it wrong. The Volkai thought he would panic, posture, or plead. He opened a channel to the engineering bay instead. "Grace," he said, "I need you." Grace Linton's voice came back immediately, dry and unhurried the way it always was. Already heard it, already running the numbers. You want the nebula, don't you? How fast can you get us in? 40 seconds if I blow the secondary coolant bypass. Consequences: we'll smell like burned rubber for a week, nothing structural. Nathan allowed himself a small smile. Do it. The Ardent lurched. The engines went from a polite hum to a sound like someone dragging a steel chair across a concrete floor, and then the rust-end violet swallowed them whole. The Volkai cruiser fired twice. Both shots went wide. Sensor interference in a Cathara-class nebula was not a theoretical inconvenience. It was a complete blackout. No targeting, no tracking, no long-range communication. Just clouds of ionized gas and the soft crackle of electromagnetic noise. They were invisible. For now. Nathan leaned back and studied the ceiling. The matriarch had called them bottom feeders, scavengers. She had said with complete confidence that humans did not negotiate, that they had been left behind by a galaxy that had moved on. He thought about that. He thought about it carefully, the way he thought about everything. 42 cycles ago, according to Volkai reckoning, the Cathara Accord had been signed. 42 cycles ago, humans had been 60 years into the age of interstellar travel. They had been children, practically, stumbling through a galaxy already carved up by older civilizations, tripping over boundaries they did not know existed, learning the rules as they broke them. The Volkai had watched that and drawn a conclusion. They had stopped watching, and in the time they stopped watching, something had changed. Nathan pulled up the tactical map of the nebula. He cross-referenced it with Grace's power readings, Priya's sensor sweeps, and 11 years of personal experience in exactly these kinds of situations. He found what he was looking for in about 6 minutes. Priya, he said, plot me a course to the deep channel on bearing 274, nice and slow, no engine spikes. You want to hide? She asked. No, he said, I want to wait. He set down the display. He sat back. He breathed steadily, the way a man breathes when he has already made his decision and is simply giving it room to arrive at the right moment. Somewhere out there, the Volkai cruiser was searching. Running its sensors hot, burning through the interference with expensive equipment, probably already sending a report back to its command structure. Probably already describing the small human ship that had run from a confrontation like it had been told it would. Let them think that. Let them think whatever they wanted. Nathan Cole had not survived 11 years at the edge of explored space by being what other species expected him to be. The nebula folded around the Ardent like a fist, and the ship waited, patient and quiet, while its captain thought. The Ardent stayed dark for 6 hours. No running lights, no active sensors. Grace had killed everything non-essential, which meant the command bay ran on emergency strips that turned everyone's skin a faint blue-green. Priya worked in near silence, tracking the Volkai cruiser's position through passive electromagnetic reads, the kind of ghost imaging that required a human hand because most automated systems got confused by ionized nebula gas. Dex made coffee. It was terrible coffee because the secondary heating coil had been killed along with everything else, and the mug was barely warm, but he made enough for everyone and left it on the ledge near Nathan's chair without saying anything. Nathan drank it. He kept reading. He had pulled up every record in the ship's database on Volkai territorial disputes. There were 47 in the last 2 centuries. Of the 47, 31 had been resolved through force. 12 had been resolved through negotiation. 4 were still open. He read all 4 open cases. Then he went back and read 6 of the resolved ones. Then he sat very still and thought about the Cathara Accord. He thought about Article 9 of the Exploration Charter. He thought about the difference between claiming a region of space and successfully defending that claim, and the difference between a gray sector and a contested one, and the particular way that Volcae matriarchs had historically overreached their authority when operating at the edges of their patrol range. By hour 7 he had something. By hour 8 he was ready. Priya, where is she? Bearing 091, she's been running a spiral pattern, patient. She thinks she has us contained. Does she? A pause, probably not. There is a current in the deep channel. It exits on the far side of the nebula. If we ride it with minimal engine use, she would have to be very lucky to catch the signature. How long to the exit? With the current, 4 hours. Nathan nodded slowly. Then he did something that surprised everyone in the room. He opened a long-range burst transmission. Tight band, low power, encrypted with standard diplomatic encoding. It would take 20 minutes to punch through the nebula interference. Maybe more. He addressed it to the Volcae cruiser. Dex looked up from his console. Sir, you are hailing them. I am sending them a document, Nathan said, not hailing them. What kind of document? A legal brief. He finished typing and sent it before anyone could ask another question. Specifically, a formal notice of territorial dispute under the Interstellar Commons Resolution, Article 44, cross-referenced with the Cathara Accord's boundary definitions as recorded in the original Volcae submission, which, it turns out, did not include this sector. Their own cartographers drew the boundary 3 light minutes short of our current position. Silence. Priya turned around slowly. You found an error in the Cathara Accord. Not an error, Nathan said. An ambiguity. The original submission used 2 different coordinate systems in 2 different sections of the same document. Depending on which system you apply, this sector is either inside Volcae space by a small margin or outside it by a larger one. He paused. The version they submitted to the Commons Secretariat used the second system. The one that puts us outside their boundary, Priya said. The one that puts us well outside their boundary, Nathan said. Which means the matriarch out there either does not know this, or she was hoping we did not. Dex stared at his console. You found all of this in 8 hours, in the dark, on cold coffee. Nathan looked at him with mild patience. 7 hours and 40 minutes, and the coffee was acceptable. The burst transmission received a response 46 minutes later. Nathan read it. Then he forwarded it to Priya's console without saying anything, and she read it too, and then she sat back in her chair with an expression that was not quite a smile but was getting close to one. The response was not from the matriarch. It was from the cruiser's first officer. It acknowledged receipt of the document. It stated that the crew had been directed to stand down from active search protocol pending review of the boundary claim. It requested that the Ardent hold its current position while the claim was forwarded to Volcae Command for confirmation. They were asking the human ship to wait, politely, with appropriate diplomatic phrasing. Grace's voice came up from engineering over the intercom. I heard. Did she really call us bottom feeders? She did, Nathan said. And now her first officer is writing us please and thank you letters. He is. A long pause. Okay, Grace said, that does it for me. I will hold the engine warm for another 4 hours. Nathan allowed himself the first real breath he had taken in 8 hours. It was not relief, exactly. It was the feeling of a thing going where he had pointed it. He thought again about what the matriarch had said. Humans do not negotiate. You are bottom feeders. He understood where she had gotten that idea. He truly did. The first century of human interstellar contact had been messy, aggressive, and often embarrassing. Humans had blundered into territories, misread signals, started small conflicts by accident, and occasionally started larger ones on purpose. They had earned a reputation in some quarters as the galaxy's most persistent nuisance. But a nuisance was not the same thing as someone who had stopped trying. And the matriarch had made a second error, one that Nathan thought was actually more revealing than the first. She had assumed that because he had not raised weapons, he had no response. She had assumed that the only moves on the board were fight or flee. She had not considered that someone might sit in the dark for 8 hours and do research. The deep current caught the Ardent an hour later, and the ship slid silently through the nebula's inner channels while the Volkai cruiser circled far above, waiting for a command that would eventually tell it to let the human vessel go. Nathan sent one more transmission before they cleared the nebula. It was addressed directly to the matriarch this time, not the first officer. It said, "My crew and I appreciate your patience in reviewing the boundary question. We will continue our survey operations in the confirmed unclaimed sectors to the spinward of your patrol range. I hope the rest of your patrol is productive." He signed it with his name and rank. He did not say anything else. He did not have to. When the Ardent finally broke through the far edge of the nebula, the stars came back all at once, bright and cold and indifferent in the way that deep space always was, which Nathan had always found more honest than comfortable. Priya stretched in her seat. She had been hunched over the passive sensor array for the better part of 10 hours, and her neck was making noises she was pretending not to hear. "We are clear," she said. "No pursuit signature." Volkai cruiser is still holding position inside the nebula perimeter. "Waiting," Nathan said, "for their command to respond." "Yes." She pulled up the comms log. "Their command is going to have a very interesting legal problem on their hands." "They are going to have several," Nathan said. "The boundary ambiguity is only the first. The second is that the matriarch fired on us. Twice. Inside a sector that her own submitted maps do not include in their territory. That makes those shots something other than a defense of claimed space." Dex had been quietly working at his terminal through all of this, and now he looked up. "I filed an incident report with the Commons Secretariat while we were still in the nebula, tight beamed to the relay at Hepara Station. It should have cleared the interference by now." Nathan looked at him. "I did not ask you to do that." "No, sir," Dex said, "but it seemed like the right time. Evidence is better fresh." Nathan studied the young man for a moment. Then he nodded once, which for him counted as enthusiastic praise. "Good thinking." They ran the Ardent on low power for the next 2 hours, letting the systems recover from the bypass Grace had blown in the nebula. The ship smelled like burned plastic and recycled air, and the secondary heating coil was going to need a full replacement, which meant the mess hall would be running on cold food until they reached Hepara. Nobody complained about this. It seemed like a reasonable trade. Nathan spent those 2 hours writing. Not the formal kind of writing he had done in the dark, the legal language and coordinate cross-references and treaty citations. This was something different. He wrote a full report for the Exploration Charter Authority. He wrote it carefully and honestly, including his own decision-making process, the 8 hours of research, the tactical choices, and the specific wording of every communication he had sent and received. He included the matriarch's exact words. He included them without editorial comment because he did not need to editorialize. The words described themselves. He also wrote something shorter, something he addressed to no authority and intended for no official record. It was 3 paragraphs. It described what it felt like to hear someone tell you that your people did not negotiate, that you were a species of scavengers left behind by a galaxy that had moved on. It described the specific kind of quiet that followed those words, not hurt, not rage, not shame, but something more like recognition, like hearing a test question and already knowing the answer. It described what he had done instead of arguing. He saved it to his personal files. He did not send it anywhere. Hepara Station appeared on the long-range sensors at hour 11, a bright cluster of lights against the dark, the kind of busy, noisy, multi-species waypoint that Nathan usually found exhausting and today found something close to welcoming. Grace came up from engineering to the command bay for the first time since the whole thing had started. She was wearing her work coveralls and had grease on her left forearm, and the look of someone who had been solving a physical problem for a long time and was moderately satisfied with the result. She stood next to Nathan's chair and looked at the sensor display. "Volkai cruiser still behind us?" she asked. "Still in the nebula," Priya said. "They have not moved." Grace nodded. "Good." She looked at Nathan. "You know what gets me? She really believed it, the matriarch. She wasn't even trying to be cruel. She just genuinely thought that was the truth." "I know," Nathan said. "That's the part that's hard to argue with," Grace said. "When someone insults you and actually believes what they're saying, you can't call them a liar." "No," Nathan agreed. "You can only show them something different." Grace thought about that. Did it work? Nathan looked at Hepara Station growing larger on the display. "I don't know yet," he said. "That depends on what her command does with the boundary question, and what the Secretariat does with the incident report, and whether anyone on the Volkai side is willing to read what I sent with an honest eye. And if they're not, then we have a legal record of everything that happened, properly filed and time-stamped, and we go from there." Grace crossed her arms. "That's a very calm way to talk about someone who shot at us and called us trash." Nathan said she set a test. She expected us to fail it in a predictable way, either by fighting or by running. We did neither. He paused. "That isn't nothing." Grace looked at him for a moment with the expression she usually reserved for particularly complicated engine problems. Then she went back to engineering without saying anything else, which was her way of indicating that she was going to think about it. Dex opened the docking channel with Hepara Station and went through the approach protocols with the kind of focused professionalism that Nathan had noticed in him more and more over the past year. The kid was getting good. Not just technically good, which he had always been, but good in the specific way that mattered at the edge of explored space, where the situations never came with instructions, and the right move was rarely obvious until after you had made it. Nathan thought about the matriarch's words one more time. Humans do not negotiate. He thought about the 47 territorial disputes in the database. He thought about the ones that ended in conflict, and the ones that did not, and what the difference between them had been. He thought about the long view, not the last year, not the last century, but the arc of it, the slow and often painful process of a young species learning how to exist in a galaxy that was, frankly, not thrilled to have them. He thought about the fact that the matriarch had stopped watching 42 cycles ago. And he thought about everything that had happened in those 42 cycles. Humans, it turned out, were very good at learning. Not all of them and not always, and not without making a significant number of mistakes along the way. But as a tendency, as a pattern, as the thing that happened when you gave them enough time and enough pressure and enough reason, they learned. The Ardent docked at Hepara Station without incident. The umbilicals locked, the pressure equalized, and the airlock cycled open to the noise and smell of a busy waypoint. Dozens of species and ships and voices layering over each other in that particular chaos that Nathan usually found exhausting. Today it sounded like something he was glad to hear. He stood in the airlock for a moment before stepping through. Behind him was the Ardent, smelling of burned plastic and still running a degree colder than normal. Ahead of him was Hepara, and the report he needed to file in person, and 3 days of repairs before they could go back out. He thought about the deep channel in the nebula. He thought about how the current had carried them through in the dark, slow and invisible, while the Volkai cruiser circled above. He thought about how patience was not the same thing as surrender. He stepped through the airlock. 2 days into their stop at Hepara Station, the response came from Volkai Command. Nathan read it at a small table in the station's multi-species commons area, surrounded by the low hum of translation fields and the smell of 6 different kinds of food. He read it twice. Then he set down his drink and looked at the wall for a while. The response was formal, diplomatic, and extremely careful. It acknowledged the boundary ambiguity that had been identified in the Cathara Accord documentation. It noted that the sector in question would be placed under formal review pending a joint survey by Volkai and Commons representatives. It expressed, in language that was as close to an apology as Volkai diplomatic writing ever got, what it called, regret at the incident involving the vessel Ardent and patrol matriarch Veska Orlun. It used the matriarch's name. Nathan had not known her name before. Veska Orlun. He said it quietly to himself just to have it, just so she was a person and not a symbol. The response also noted, in a final paragraph that had clearly been added by someone more senior than the author of the rest of the document, that the Commons Secretariat had formally logged the incident report filed by Ensign Dex Farrell. The response requested that no further legal action be taken by the Ardent's crew pending the outcome of the boundary review. Which was, when you stripped away the diplomatic language, a request. The Volkai were asking. Nathan finished his drink. It was something local, a Hepara blend that tasted like warm copper and something that might have been fruit, and it was either very good or very bad. He had not yet decided which. He ordered another one. Priya arrived 20 minutes later and slid into the seat across from him. She had been running the repair schedule for the Ardent and had the particular look of someone who had been arguing with supply depots all morning. She read the response on her own tablet and said nothing for a full minute. They named her, she said finally. Veska Orlun, Nathan said. She called us bottom feeders, Priya said, and now her command is writing us please and thank you notes. The notes are for them as much as for us, Nathan said. They have a legal exposure problem. Their patrol matriarch fired on a civilian survey vessel in a sector that, as far as anyone can now prove, was not theirs to patrol. And she did not know that, Priya said, or she knew and assumed we wouldn't. Either way, it's their problem now. Nathan turned the tablet over on the table. The question is what we do with it. Priya looked at him. You could push, she said. File a full complaint with the Secretariat. Force the boundary review into public record. Make Volkai command answer for the matriarch's behavior in an official setting. Yes, Nathan said. You could also drop it, she said. Take the acknowledgement, let the review happen quietly and move on. Yes. Which are you going to do? Nathan picked up his drink. Neither, he said. I am going to request a meeting. Priya blinked. With who? With Matriarch Veska Orlun. The silence that followed was the kind that had texture. Priya set down her tablet. She looked at Nathan with the focused attention she usually gave to sensor arrays that were doing something unexpected. You want to meet with the woman who shot at us and told us we were evolutionary dead ends? Yes. Why? Nathan thought about how to explain it. He thought about Grace's question. Did it work? He thought about the 3 paragraphs he had saved to his personal files and not sent anywhere. He thought about the arc of it, the long, slow, often painful arc of a young species learning how to exist in a galaxy that had initially not wanted them there. Because she stopped watching 42 cycles ago, he said. And a lot has happened since then. And if she is going to keep making decisions about us, she should probably be working from current information. Priya considered this. You want to update her? I want to talk to her, Nathan said. I have sent her legal briefs and incident reports. She has sent me formal acknowledgments through her first officer. We have not actually spoken since she told me to surrender and cut the channel. She was not particularly interested in speaking then. No, Nathan agreed, but her command just wrote me a very careful letter asking me not to escalate. That means she is in a position where people above her are paying attention to what she does next. He paused. That tends to change what a person is willing to consider. Priya picked up her tablet again and started working on something. I will see if I can get a contact channel through the Commons Secretariat. They have a mediation office. Good. This might not go anywhere, she said. She might refuse. She might, Nathan said. That would also be information. The request went through the Secretariat's mediation office the next morning. The response came back in 4 hours, which was faster than Nathan had expected. Veska Orlun would speak with him. Not in person. The Volkai cruiser was still somewhere in the Cathara region, and she was not offering to come to Hepara, but she would open a formal channel. The call was scheduled for 1400 station time the following day. Nathan spent the evening not preparing in any formal sense. He did not write notes or plan arguments. He ate with Priya and Dex and Grace in the station's commons, and they talked about things that had nothing to do with Volkai boundary disputes. Grace had found a parts dealer who could get them a replacement heating coil 2 days early. Dex had been reading about the Hepara station's history and was full of interesting facts about the species who had originally built it, 5 centuries ago, before selling it to the Commons Authority. Priya had found a shop that sold actual physical books and had spent most of her afternoon inside it. Nathan listened and ate and thought about nothing in particular. At 1400 the next day, he sat down in front of the communications terminal in the private room the Secretariat had arranged. Veska Orlan appeared on the screen. She looked exactly as she had before, the angular Volkai face, the 4 upper limbs folded in a resting configuration, the cluster of sensory organs that gave no expression a human could easily read. The translator bead on her collar was not pulsing orange this time. She was using diplomatic encoding. She said, "Captain Cole." "Matriarch Orlan," he said. A pause, the translator processed, then processed again. "You requested this meeting." "I did." "You could have pursued legal action instead," she said. "My commands letter made that clear. You chose not to." "Not yet," Nathan said honestly. "I wanted to speak with you first." Another pause. "Why?" Nathan thought about how to answer that. He thought about the answer that would be strategic and the answer that would be politic and the answer that was simply true. He chose the true one. "Because you said something before you cut the channel that I have been thinking about. You said humans do not negotiate, that we are scavengers, that the galaxy has moved past us." He could not read her face, but he had the sense that she was listening. "I have been trying to understand," he said, "where you got that idea, and I think I know the answer. 42 cycles ago, when the Cathara Accord was signed, we were, from the outside, a fairly difficult species to deal with. Aggressive, disorganized, prone to misunderstanding signals and overreacting to them. I can see how an observer from that period would form that conclusion." "You admit it," she said. "I am describing what was observable," he said. "What I am also describing is that 42 cycles is a long time, and in that time the thing you observed has changed." "Has it?" she said. It was not quite a question. "I found the boundary ambiguity in 8 hours, Nathan said. "In a dark ship, on passive sensors with no support from any command structure. I found it because I sat down and looked carefully at the original documents. That is not what a scavenger does. That is not what a species does when it has stopped developing." He paused. "What I am asking you to consider, not to agree with, just to consider, is that the picture you are working from is 42 cycles old. And pictures change." The silence on the channel was different from the silence in the command bay. It had more air in it, more space for things to move. "You did not fire on my ship," Orlan said finally, "even when I fired on yours." "No," Nathan said. "You could have. Your countermeasure array could have been configured offensively at short range." "Yes." "Why did you not?" Nathan considered the question. "Because firing back would have started something that did not need to be started," he said, "and because the point was not to win a fight. The point was to still be in the conversation at the end of the day." Orlan was quiet for a long time. Nathan waited. He had found, quite good at waiting. "The boundary review will take approximately 3 of your months," she said at last. "The sector will be formally classified during that period." "I understand," Nathan said. "Your legal claim has merit," she said. The words seemed to cost her something. "The coordinate discrepancy is real. I was not aware of it." "I believe you," Nathan said. "You believe me?" "Yes." Another pause, longer this time. "You are a strange person, Captain Cole," she said, "even for a human." "I have been told that," he said. The call ended 10 minutes later, with nothing resolved and nothing promised and no agreement of any kind signed or spoken. It was, by any formal measure, an inconclusive conversation between a human ship captain and a Voakai patrol matriarch who had recently fired on him. Nathan walked out of the private room and found Priya waiting in the corridor. "How did it go?" she asked. "Well," he said. "You got something." "Not in writing," he said, "but yes, I got something." She fell into step beside him. "What?" He thought about Veska Orlund's last words. Strange, she had called him, even for a human, and the way she had said it had been different from the way she had said things on the channel during the standoff. Less dismissal, more something else. "She looked," Nathan said. "She didn't agree and she didn't promise anything, but for about 30 minutes she actually looked at us. Not at who we were 42 cycles ago, at who we are now." He paused. "That's something." Priya considered this for a moment. "Is it enough?" Nathan thought about the long view again. The arc of it, the patience of it, the way things that seemed fixed could, if you were willing to wait and work and not give up on the conversation, eventually move. "It's a start," he said. 3 months and 11 days after the incident in the Cathara Nebula, the Boundary Review concluded. Nathan read the official determination in the Ardent's command bay, where he had been reviewing survey data from their most recent mapping run. A stretch of unclaimed space 2 sectors spinward of the Cathara region, full of nothing but cold gas clouds and the distant light of a young star that had not yet accumulated enough mass to properly ignite. The determination was 12 pages. Nathan read all of them. The sector was ruled non-Voakai. The coordinate discrepancy in the original Cathara Accord submission had been confirmed by the Joint Survey Team, which had included 3 human cartographers, a fact Nathan had specifically requested through the Secretariat and had not been entirely sure would be granted. Their measurements were conclusive. The sector fell outside the Voakai boundary, by a margin that made the original patrol intrusion an error of significant magnitude. The incident report filed by Ensign Dex Farrell was formally noted in the record. No punitive action was recommended. On the last page of the determination, there was a brief statement from the Voakai delegate to the Joint Survey. The statement was official and dry in the way that official and dry statements always were. But near the end, in language that had the particular careful quality of something translated 3 times, it said, "The Voakai delegation acknowledges the contribution of the Ardent crew to the resolution of this matter, and recognizes that the methodology applied in identifying the discrepancy demonstrated a level of analytical precision consistent with advanced survey operations." It was, as acknowledgments from Voakai delegates went, approximately as warm as a summer afternoon. Nathan read it twice. Then he set the tablet down on his chair and walked to the observation port at the forward end of the command bay. It was a small port, barely wide enough to see through comfortably, but it gave a clean view of the space ahead, and the star they were approaching, young and yellow-white and still not entirely sure what it was going to become, filled it with a faint, steady light. Priya came in 10 minutes later with 2 cups of coffee. Real coffee this time because they had resupplied at Hepara before leaving, and handed him one without asking whether he wanted it. "I read it," she said. "The whole thing." "The last page twice," she said. Nathan wrapped both hands around the mug. The coffee was good. It was remarkable what a difference a working heating coil made. The Joint Survey found 17 additional mapping discrepancies in the Accord documentation, he said. The Secretariat is recommending a full audit of the boundary submissions. "I heard," Priya said. 3 other species have already submitted amendment requests based on the Ardent precedent. Nathan looked at her. "Already?" "Already, the Accord audit is going to be a significant process. A lot of old boundaries, a lot of old assumptions. She paused. A lot of things that got fixed in place 42 cycles ago and never got looked at again. Nathan looked back out at the young star. He thought about Veska Orlun. He had not heard from her directly since the channel call at Hepara. He had not expected to. But the survey team had passed through the edge of her patrol range, and the Volkai delegate who had co-signed the determination was listed as operating out of the same command structure. He wondered whether she had read the final document. He wondered whether the last paragraph had been her idea or someone else's. He would probably never know. That was fine. He had learned over 11 years at the edge of explored space that you did not always get to know how the story ended on the other side. You could do your part well and thoroughly and honestly and still never find out what the other person thought about it afterward. What you could know was your own part. He had sat in the dark for 8 hours and done research. He had sent a legal brief through a nebula. He had asked for a meeting with someone who had insulted him and fired on his ship, and he had talked to her honestly and without anger, and he had asked her to look. He did not know what she had done with that. He knew what he had done with it. Grace came up from engineering. She was making this a habit now, coming to the command bay when things happened, and leaned against the wall near the observation port. She had the determination on her own tablet and was reading the last page with the expression she gave things that required a second look. Advanced Survey Operations, she said. That's what they called it. Yes, Nathan said. She called us bottom feeders 3 months ago. She did. Grace set down the tablet. I wonder if she read this. I wonder too, Nathan said. Does it matter, Grace asked. Whether she reads it or not, whether she changes her mind or not, does it change what we did? Nathan thought about that. The young star outside was brighter now as they closed the distance, still soft at this range but with the particular quality of light that felt intentional, like it was building toward something. Stars like that, the young ones, the unformed ones, had always made him think about time differently, about how long things took, about how what looked like stillness from a distance was, up close, constant motion. No, he said, it doesn't change what we did. Dex had been at his console through all of this, pretending to work on the survey data but very obviously listening. Now he swiveled in his chair. Can I ask something? Go ahead, Nathan said. When she said those things, the bottom feeder thing, the we don't negotiate thing, were you angry? Nathan thought about how to answer honestly. Not the way you might expect, he said. There was something. I don't think I have the right word for it. It wasn't anger exactly. It was more like clarity, like hearing a specific version of the problem very clearly, which makes it easier to work on. Dex thought about this, so the insult helped. The insult told me what she believed, Nathan said, and what she believed told me what she needed to see, so yes, in a way. Dex turned this over. He was 26 years old and had been in deep space for 3 years and had grown, in that time, from someone who was technically excellent into someone who was becoming something more than that. Nathan had watched it happening without comment, which was his preferred method of mentorship. I think I would have been angry, Dex said. Probably, Nathan agreed. That's a reasonable response. But you weren't. I have been at this for 11 years, Nathan said. Early on, I had a lot of anger. It takes a while to find something more useful. Grace pushed off the wall. More useful like legal briefs. More useful like continuing to show up, Nathan said. The briefs are a tool. The showing up is the thing. They held that for a moment, the 4 of them in the command bay, the young star ahead. The Ardent moving through clean, unclaimed space with both heating coils functional and a full supply bay, and a determination in the database that said, in 12 pages and official language, that they had been right. Then Priya looked at her console and said, Preliminary scan on the young star is interesting. There's a debris field on the inner edge of the habitable zone. Could be a secondary formation event. And just like that, they were back to work. This was also the thing Nathan had found over 11 years. The galaxy did not pause to acknowledge what you had done. There was no moment where everything stopped and people said, "Well done, it is finished." The next thing was always already beginning. The young star with its debris field, the unclaimed sectors ahead, the new mapping runs and new situations and new moments where someone would look at the small human ship with its crew of 4 and decide they knew what they were dealing with. Nathan finished his coffee. He set the mug on the ledge near his chair. He sat down. "Put the debris field on the primary display," he said. "Let us see what we have." Priya pulled up the scan. The debris field spread across the display in soft false color, blues and greens for density, yellows for composition, a scattering of brighter points where larger fragments caught the young star's light. It was beautiful in the specific way that the edge of space was always beautiful, not comfortable, not easy, but genuinely quietly worth looking at. Nathan looked at it. He had not sent Veska Orlan a copy of the final determination. He had thought about it. He had decided in the end that she would find it through her own channels if she wanted to, and that sending it would feel like gloating, which was not the thing he was trying to do. What he had sent her, 2 weeks after their call at Hepara, was something very short, 3 sentences. He had sent it through the Secretariat's mediation channel, formal enough to log but informal enough not to require a response. He had told her the boundary question would take time to resolve, and in the meantime he hoped the rest of her patrol was going well. He had told her that the conversation at Hepara had been worth having. He had told her that he hoped it would not be the last one. She had not responded. That was fine. Nathan Cole had learned a long time ago that you did not do the right thing because you were guaranteed a response. You did it because it was the right thing, and because the record of it was its own kind of answer, and because in a galaxy full of old assumptions and fixed pictures and species who had stopped watching each other 42 cycles ago, the act of continuing to show up, honest, patient, prepared, and not angry, was the most powerful argument you could make. He looked at the debris field. He thought about what was underneath it, what the secondary formation event might have left, what kind of survey data would come back from a close pass. He thought about the long view. He thought about the arc. He thought about a young star that had not yet decided what it was going to become. And then he went back to work, in the quiet and steady way of a person who had already made his decision and was simply giving it room to arrive. Outside the observation port, the light from the star grew slowly stronger, patient and constant, the way all the best things were.